Most of us have grown up believing that eggs are the gold standard of protein, the food to beat when it comes to building or preserving muscle. And while eggs are certainly valuable, here's a surprising truth that many people don't know. There is another food sitting quietly on supermarket shelves that outperforms eggs in one crucial way. It fights sarcopenia, the age-related loss of muscle mass and strength, even faster. Why does this matter? Sarcopenia isn't just about looking weaker or losing muscle definition. It's about independence. When muscle starts to fade, balance declines, metabolism slows, bone density weakens, and even the brain suffers. In fact, research shows that muscle mass is one of the strongest predictors of longevity. Stronger muscles literally mean a stronger brain and a longer life. Here's what the science reveals. Muscle is not only tissue that helps us move, it's an endocrine organ, a living chemical factory that sends out protective signals to the brain, regulates blood sugar, and produces molecules that fight inflammation. And when we don't fuel it properly, or when we rely on outdated nutrition myths, we lose one of the most powerful allies for healthy aging. So what's the food I'm talking about? It's not eggs, not steak, not protein shakes. It's something more ancient, plant-based, and surprisingly simple: lentils. Packed with leucine, lysine, magnesium, and plant compounds that act synergistically, lentils trigger the muscle-building pathways in a way that rivals, and in some cases surpasses, traditional animal proteins. A 2021 paper in Nutrients found that older adults who included lentils and other legumes consistently preserved more lean body mass and functional strength than those who relied only on animal protein. Over the next few minutes, I'll break down 6 science-backed reasons why lentils can be a secret weapon against sarcopenia and how you can use them strategically, whether you're over 60 and trying to preserve strength, or in midlife and aiming to future-proof your body. Along the way, I'll share simple habits, daily protocols, and mindset shifts that translate cutting-edge research into tools you can apply starting today. Because here's the truth. It's not about eating more, it's about eating smarter. Most people assume that building or preserving muscle is all about eating more protein, usually from animal sources like chicken, beef, or eggs. And while protein is indeed essential, the real story is more precise. Muscle doesn't respond to protein in general, it responds to signals. And one of the most powerful signals is the amino acid leucine. Think of leucine as a key that turns on the ignition of your muscle's growth engine. Inside your muscle fibers, there's a molecular switchboard called mTOR, mechanistic target of rapamycin. It sounds complex, but here's the simple version. mTOR is the command center that tells your body whether to build new muscle proteins or to conserve energy and stay in maintenance mode. When leucine enters the bloodstream after a meal, it knocks on the door of mTOR and says, it's time to build. That's why bodybuilders have long obsessed over leucine-rich foods. But what's fascinating is that lentils, a humble legume we often overlook, carry a remarkably high level of leucine for a plant-based food. Now some might argue, but isn't animal protein more efficient? Yes, gram for gram. Animal sources have a slightly higher bioavailability. But here's where the nuance matters. Most people don't lack protein. They lack consistency and metabolic balance. Lentils provide leucine in a package that comes with fiber, minerals, and phytochemicals that reduce the silent processes working against muscle, inflammation, and insulin resistance. That means the leucine from lentils doesn't just flip the growth switch, it does so in an environment where muscles are more likely to respond effectively. A study published in Nutrients in 2021 compared plant-based and animal-based diets in older adults. The researchers found something striking. When total protein intake was matched, older adults consuming legumes like lentils maintained muscle mass and functional strength as effectively, and in some cases more effectively, than their counterparts relying primarily on animal protein. Why? Because the plant-based group had lower inflammation markers and better insulin sensitivity. In other words, their muscle tissue was simply more ready to listen to leucine's growth signal. Think of it like this. Imagine shouting instructions into a noisy room versus a quiet one. Animal protein provides the loud voice of leucine, but if the metabolic environment is chaotic, full of inflammation, poor glucose control, oxidative stress, the message doesn't land. Lentils, on the other hand, provide a clear, strong signal, and they quiet the background noise. That's why their leucine can be so effective, even though it comes from a plant. Here's a simple tool to apply this science. Aim for at least one lentil-based meal 3 to 4 times per week. That could be a warm lentil soup with vegetables, a lentil salad with olive oil and herbs, or even lentils blended into a savory dip. If you're over 60, pairing lentils with a small amount of whole grains like brown rice or quinoa creates what nutritionists call a complete protein profile, ensuring your muscles get all the essential amino acids in one sitting. And if you're under 60, making this a weekly habit is a form of future-proofing, building resilience into your muscles before the decline sets in. Another practical point, timing matters. Research suggests that muscles are especially responsive to protein and to leucine in particular within about 2 hours after physical activity. That means having a lentil-based meal after a walk, resistance training, or even light yoga can maximize the muscle-preserving effect. You don't need to chase perfection or measure every gram, but building this rhythm, movement followed by smart nourishment, is one of the most effective long-term strategies against sarcopenia. And finally, here's the empowering perspective. Sarcopenia isn't just inevitable aging, it's partly a signaling problem. Muscles stop listening when the wrong environment surrounds them. By using foods like lentils that carry both the trigger, leucine, and the support system, fiber, minerals, anti-inflammatory compounds, you're not just feeding your muscles, you're reteaching them to respond. So the next time you look at a plate of lentils, don't see them as a humble side dish. See them as molecular messengers. Tiny switches telling your body, stay strong, rebuild, adapt. Because at the cellular level, that's exactly what they do. When most people think about muscle health, they picture protein shakes, weight training, or amino acids. Almost no one thinks about fiber. Yet emerging science shows that your gut microbiome, the vast community of trillions of bacteria living in your digestive tract, may be one of the most powerful levers for preventing sarcopenia. And lentils, with their unique blend of fibers and resistant starch, are like rocket fuel for the microbiome. Here's why this matters. The bacteria in your gut don't just digest food, they produce chemicals that talk directly to your muscles, your immune system, and even your brain. One of the most important products of this microbial activity is a group of molecules called short-chain fatty acids, SCFAs, especially butyrate. Think of butyrate as a peacekeeper inside the body. It reduces inflammation, improves insulin sensitivity, and enhances mitochondrial function. And mitochondria are the engines inside your muscle cells. The better those engines run, the more strength, endurance, and recovery your muscles can maintain. Now, here's the surprising link. Studies in journals like Frontiers in Physiology have found that older adults with higher levels of SCFAs in their blood have significantly better muscle mass and grip strength compared to those with lower levels. In other words, your gut bacteria's output directly predicts your muscle function. And where do those SCFAs come from? They're created when gut bacteria ferment dietary fibers and resistant starches, exactly what lentils provide in abundance. Eggs, by contrast, contain zero fiber. They may provide protein, but they don't feed the bacteria that protect and support muscle function long term. Imagine your gut as a factory. If you only supply raw protein but starve the factory workers, your gut bacteria, you'll get incomplete results. But when you provide lentils, you're not only giving your muscles leucine to build with, you're also feeding the bacterial workforce that makes the environment safe, anti-inflammatory, and metabolically supportive. It's a 1-2 punch, direct muscle signaling plus indirect microbiome support. Here's something practical you can do. Aim to consume lentils in a way that preserves their resistant starch. For example, cooking lentils and then letting them cool, say in a lentil salad, actually increases their resistant starch content, which means more food for your gut bacteria and more SCFAs for your muscles. It's a small tweak with outsized benefits. Another overlooked advantage of lentil fiber is blood sugar control. Muscle thrives when insulin is steady and predictable. But when blood sugar spikes and crashes repeatedly, insulin signaling becomes dulled, a condition called insulin resistance. That resistance tells muscles, don't bother absorbing glucose, which means less fuel for workouts and more fat storage around the midsection. Lentils flatten that roller coaster. Their slow digesting carbohydrates and fibers drip feed glucose into the bloodstream, keeping insulin sensitivity high and muscles receptive to fuel. You might ask, does this really translate into day-to-day strength? The answer is yes. A study in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition showed that adults who replaced refined carbs with legumes like lentils for just 8 weeks had better insulin sensitivity and improved markers of inflammation. Over time, that metabolic stability supports the preservation of lean mass and reduces the creeping loss of strength, so many people assume is inevitable with age. Here's a mindset shift. Don't just think of lentils as food for you. Think of them as food for your microbiome, which in turn protects your muscles. When you put a spoonful of lentils on your plate, you're really investing in trillions of tiny allies that will work around the clock to preserve your strength, coordination, and vitality. And this is the empowering part. By choosing lentils regularly, you're taking control of a system many people think is beyond their influence, the gut-muscle axis. It's not about supplements, gimmicks, or expensive powders. It's about giving your body the raw materials it evolved to thrive on. So the next time you're planning dinner, ask yourself, am I only feeding my muscles, or am I also feeding the ecosystem that keeps those muscles young? That's the difference between short-term strength and lifelong resilience. When most people think about muscle preservation, their first thought is protein. But if you zoom out, you realize muscle strength isn't only about building tissue. It's about whether that tissue can actually function. And here's the overlooked truth. Muscles don't just need amino acids, they need minerals, specifically magnesium and potassium to contract, relax, and generate energy efficiently. Without these two, even a high-protein diet can leave muscles weak, fatigued, and prone to cramping. Let's start with magnesium. It's involved in more than 300 biochemical reactions in the body, but one of its most critical roles is regulating the conversion of food into usable energy in the form of ATP, adenosine triphosphate. What many people don't realize is that ATP only works when it's bound to magnesium. In other words, magnesium is the spark plug that allows energy transfer inside your muscle fibers. Without enough of it, your engine stalls. This is one reason magnesium deficiency is strongly linked to muscle weakness and early onset sarcopenia. Lentils are a powerhouse source of magnesium. A single cup can provide nearly a third of your daily requirement. Compare that to eggs, which contain virtually none. It's not just about intake, it's about absorption and balance. Magnesium from plant foods like lentils comes packaged with other compounds, fiber, phytochemicals, potassium, that enhance how effectively your body can use it. Now, let's turn to potassium. Potassium is essential for nerve signaling. Every time you flex a muscle, from lifting a grocery bag to standing up from a chair, your nervous system sends an electrical signal to muscle fibers. That signal depends on a delicate dance between sodium and potassium across cell membranes. Too little potassium, and that signal becomes sluggish. The result, weaker contractions, slower reaction time, and higher risk of falls, one of the most dangerous outcomes of sarcopenia in older adults. Here's the striking part. Surveys consistently show that more than 90% of adults don't meet the recommended daily intake of potassium. Yet lentils are one of the most concentrated, accessible, and affordable sources. Unlike processed foods, which are often overloaded with sodium and nearly devoid of potassium, lentils help restore the balance. Think of it like tuning a musical instrument. The right potassium to sodium ratio ensures the notes of your muscle system are sharp, responsive, and coordinated. Science backs this up. A study published in the Journal of Gerontology found that older adults with higher dietary potassium intake had significantly greater muscle mass and better physical performance scores than those with lower intake, even after adjusting for protein consumption. In other words, minerals were just as predictive of strength as protein was. So how do you apply this knowledge? One practical step is to combine lentils with potassium-rich vegetables like spinach, tomatoes, or squash. This creates a mineral-rich, muscle-boosting meal that goes far beyond what a piece of meat or a couple of eggs can offer. A warm lentil stew with leafy greens, or even a lentil curry with tomato base, becomes more than comfort food. It becomes a neuromuscular performance enhancer. Another strategy, focus on meal timing. Magnesium and potassium are particularly critical in the evening because that's when muscle repair, nerve recalibration, and electrolyte balance happen during sleep. Having a lentil-based dinner not only supports post-meal blood sugar control, but also ensures your muscles and nerves are primed for overnight recovery. And here's a motivating perspective. When you eat lentils, you're not just getting protein for structure, you're also restoring the electrical and chemical environment that makes those muscles work. Imagine building a high-performance car, but forgetting to fill it with oil and coolant. That's what protein without minerals looks like. But lentils give you both the engine parts and the fluids to keep the system humming. This is why I encourage you to stop thinking in terms of just protein and start thinking about nutrient orchestration, because your muscles don't operate in isolation. They are part of a symphony, and minerals like magnesium and potassium are the conductors. With lentils on your plate, that symphony plays in tune, strength, endurance, and coordination all working together. When we think about losing muscle with age, we often picture the simple mechanics. I'm not lifting as much, so I'm losing strength. But beneath that surface is a quieter, more destructive process, inflammation. Scientists now call it inflammaging, the slow, persistent rise of inflammatory signals in the body as we get older. And here's the critical point. Chronic inflammation doesn't just make you feel stiff or tired. It actively dismantles muscle tissue. Here's what the research shows. When inflammatory markers like C-reactive protein, CRP, or interleukin-6, IL-6 are chronically elevated, the body shifts into a catabolic state, meaning it breaks down muscle faster than it builds it. In practical terms, it's like trying to renovate a house while a demolition crew is working at the same time. No matter how much protein you eat or how hard you train, the muscle signal gets drowned out. So where do lentils come in? Unlike eggs or meat, which provide protein without anti-inflammatory support, lentils deliver protein packaged with polyphenols, resistant starch, and antioxidant compounds. These plant molecules act like fire extinguishers in the body. They lower the very inflammatory pathways that accelerate sarcopenia. For example, lentils are rich in flavonoids and tannins, compounds shown in Food and Function 2020 to reduce oxidative stress and dampen pro-inflammatory cytokines. Resistant starch in lentils feeds gut bacteria that, as we discussed earlier, produce short-chain fatty acids like butyrate. Butyrate itself is a powerful anti-inflammatory molecule, directly calming immune cells and improving the function of mitochondria inside muscle tissue. The net effect, less inflammatory noise and more room for your muscles to hear the growth signals from protein and exercise. Think of it like this. If inflammation is static on a radio, then lentils help clear the channel. Protein and exercise are the music. Without reducing the static, no matter how loud you turn up the volume, the tune gets lost. But when you quiet that interference with anti-inflammatory foods, suddenly the signal comes through clearly. Muscles can adapt, repair, and grow. A practical strategy here is frequency. Inflammation isn't solved in one meal. It's about consistently lowering the background fire over weeks and months. That means building lentils into your weekly rhythm, not as a rare side dish, but as a mainstay. Soups, curries, salads, even lentil-based pasta can all serve as reliable anti-inflammatory fuel. Another useful tool, pair lentils with healthy fats like olive oil or avocado. Fats help absorb fat-soluble polyphenols and further reduce inflammation by balancing omega-6 to omega-3 ratios. A lentil salad dressed in extra virgin olive oil is not only delicious, it's a targeted anti-inflammatory protocol for your muscles. Now here's the empowering part. Many people believe chronic inflammation is just part of aging, something inevitable, but that's not true. Every bite you take is a choice between fueling the fire or calming it. By choosing lentils and other anti-inflammatory foods consistently, you are literally rewriting the aging script for your muscles. You're telling your body, preserve strength, protect resilience, extend vitality. And if this insight resonates with you, if you find yourself thinking, why hasn't anyone explained muscle health this way before, then consider subscribing to this channel. Every week, we translate cutting-edge science into practical tools for stronger bodies, sharper minds, and healthier aging. Hit that subscribe button and join a community committed to staying strong from the inside out. Because here's the truth. Fighting sarcopenia isn't just about adding more protein or more reps at the gym. It's about removing the silent forces that sabotage muscle health. And lentils, humble as they are one of the most effective foods to quiet the storm of inflammation and let your body's natural strength emerge. If you've ever noticed how energy seems to crash after a heavy, starchy meal, or how cravings creep in a few hours after eating, You've experienced a roller coaster of unstable blood sugar, and while many people associate blood sugar swings with diabetes risk, here's the lesser known truth: unstable glucose control also accelerates muscle loss. Why? Because muscles are the largest sink for glucose in the body. When insulin sensitivity is high, glucose flows smoothly into muscle cells, fueling activity and recovery. But when insulin resistance develops, often from years of blood sugar spikes, muscles stop receiving fuel efficiently and the body begins breaking them down instead. This is where lentils shine. Lentils have one of the lowest glycemic indexes of any carbohydrate-rich food. That means they release glucose slowly and steadily, preventing the sharp rises and sudden crashes that stress the pancreas and dull insulin sensitivity. In fact, a study in the Journal of Nutrition found that replacing high glycemic foods like white rice or potatoes with lentils reduced post-meal blood sugar spikes by up to 35%. That's not just about energy levels, that's about protecting your muscle tissue from the metabolic chaos that erodes it over time. Here's a simple analogy. Think of your muscles as an elite team of workers. To perform at their best, they need a steady paycheck, consistent energy supply. When blood sugar is unstable, it's like paying them in unpredictable bursts, sometimes too much, sometimes too little. Over time, those workers get demoralized and leave. But with lentils, the energy flow is steady, predictable, and sustainable. Your muscles stay fueled, functional, and engaged. Satiety is another piece of this puzzle. One of the hidden drivers of sarcopenia is unwanted weight gain. Extra fat tissue, especially visceral fat around the abdomen, produces inflammatory molecules that attack muscle fibers and worsen insulin resistance. The cycle is vicious: more fat, less muscle, more instability, faster decline. Lentils help break this cycle by keeping you full longer. Their combination of protein and soluble fiber triggers satiety hormones like peptide YY and GLP-1, which tell your brain, "I'm satisfied, no need to overeat." In fact, research published in Appetite 2016 found that meals containing lentils led to 31% greater satiety compared to calorie-matched meals of pasta or bread. That means fewer cravings, steadier appetite, and easier weight management, all of which indirectly protect muscle mass. Because remember, excess fat isn't just an aesthetic concern, it's metabolically active tissue that erodes strength from the inside out. Here's something practical you can try. Swap refined carbs for lentils at least 3 times per week. If you usually have rice as a base for meals, try half rice and half lentils. Your blood sugar will thank you. If you reach for bread or pasta at lunch, experiment with a lentil salad topped with vegetables and olive oil. These small swaps compound over time, creating a metabolic landscape where muscle can thrive instead of decay. And timing matters too. Having lentils earlier in the day, at lunch for example, has been shown to flatten blood sugar responses, not just at that meal, but also at dinner. Scientists call this the second meal effect. So by choosing lentils at midday, you're actually setting up your muscles for a more stable environment hours later when you're recovering and repairing overnight. The empowering perspective here is simple. Your muscles don't just depend on exercise, they depend on the quality of the fuel system that surrounds them. By controlling blood sugar and maintaining satiety, lentils indirectly create the conditions for long-term strength. They stop the drip-drip erosion caused by insulin resistance and inflammation, and instead keep your muscles well-fed, well-protected, and ready to perform. So the next time you think about preserving strength as you age, don't only ask, am I getting enough protein? Ask, am I stabilizing my fuel system? Because the stability of that system may be the single biggest determinant of whether your muscles thrive or waste away. And lentils are one of the simplest, most powerful foods to keep that system balanced. Would you like me to continue into point 6, the neuromuscular link, better brain, better muscle, with a second subtle call to action, or pause for refinements? You said, next. ChatGPT said, perfect. Here's the full expansion of point 6, the neuromuscular link, better brain, better muscle. 650 words with the second subtle call to action. When we talk about muscle, most people think of biceps, legs, or the core. But the real master of strength isn't the muscle itself, it's the brain. Every contraction, every movement, every ounce of coordination depends on the nervous system sending precise, reliable signals to muscle fibers. And here's the powerful truth. The healthier your brain, the stronger and more resilient your muscles will be. This is why sarcopenia is not just a muscular problem, it's also a neurological one. Let's unpack this. Your brain communicates with your muscles through motor neurons. These neurons release neurotransmitters that trigger fibers to contract as we age. Not only do muscle fibers shrink, but motor neurons also decline. The result? Slower reaction time, weaker strength, and higher risk of falls. But here's where lentils come in. They don't just support the body, they nourish the brain that controls the body. Lentils are rich in folate, iron, and polyphenols, nutrients that directly impact brain health. Folate, for example, lowers homocysteine levels, which are linked to cognitive decline and neurodegeneration. Iron ensures oxygen delivery to the brain, powering the neurons that fire muscle commands. Polyphenols, meanwhile, enhance brain-derived neurotrophic factor, BDNF, a growth factor often described as fertilizer for the brain. Higher BDNF means better neuroplasticity, stronger neural connections, and more resilient signaling to muscles. Research backs this up. A study published in Aging Research Reviews highlighted that diets rich in legumes and plant-based polyphenols were associated with improved cognitive performance and reduced risk of age-related motor decline. Another study in the Journals of Gerontology found that higher folate intake correlated with not only sharper cognition, but also improved gait speed and grip strength, two key markers of sarcopenia prevention. In other words, supporting the brain supports the body. Here's an analogy. Imagine your muscles as light bulbs. You can make the bulbs bigger and stronger with protein and training, but if the wiring from the power source, your brain, is frayed, the bulbs will flicker dimly no matter what. Lentils don't just give you the building blocks for the bulb, they also reinforce the wiring, ensuring the signal is strong and steady. Practically speaking, this means building lentils into meals alongside brain-boosting partners. A lentil salad with walnuts, for example, combines plant protein with omega-3 fatty acids, amplifying BDNF production and protecting neurons. A lentil soup with leafy greens adds extra folate, doubling down on cognitive protection. These aren't just meals, they're neuromuscular support systems on a plate. Another strategy is consistency. Neural health thrives on regular supply, not occasional bursts. Just like the brain benefits from daily movement and learning, it benefits from daily nourishment with nutrients like folate and polyphenols. Making lentils a staple food ensures your nervous system stays as well fed as your muscles. Here's the empowering takeaway. Strength isn't just about lifting weights. It's about the brain-muscle partnership. Every time you eat lentils, you're not only protecting your muscles from breakdown, you're protecting the wiring that makes those muscles functional, coordinated, and powerful. And if this perspective is helpful, if you're beginning to see how interconnected systems like brain and muscle truly are, I invite you to share this video with someone you care about. It could be a parent, a friend, or even a workout partner. Sometimes one shift in perspective, like realizing muscle health begins in the brain, is enough to change the way someone approaches their health journey entirely. Because in the end, fighting sarcopenia is not about isolated fixes. It's about understanding the system, brain, gut, metabolism, muscle, and making small daily choices that strengthen the whole network. Lentils may seem simple, but in reality they are a neurological and muscular ally, helping you stay sharp, strong, and steady with every passing year. We've covered a lot of ground today, but the thread running through it all is simple. Sarcopenia is not an inevitable part of aging. It's a result of signals, environments, and choices. And the surprising truth is that a food as humble as lentils can influence every one of those layers. We saw how lentils provide leucine, which flips on the muscle-building switch of mTOR. We explored how their fibers and resistant starch feed the microbiome, which in turn produces short-chain fatty acids that protect both muscle and mitochondria. We looked at magnesium and potassium, the forgotten minerals that keep muscles contracting and nerves firing. We examined how lentils calm inflammation, one of the most destructive forces behind muscle loss. We saw how their unique effect on blood sugar and satiety stabilizes metabolism, creating the conditions for lean mass to thrive. And finally, we connected the dots between brain health and muscle health, and how lentils nourish both sides of that partnership. The bigger message here is empowerment. Your muscles aren't just shaped by the gym or by genetics. They're shaped by the small, repeated decisions you make at the table every day. By adding lentils into your routine consistently, thoughtfully, you're sending your body a powerful set of signals. Stay strong, stay coordinated, stay resilient. So here's a challenge I'd like you to try this week. Swap just 3 of your usual side dishes, maybe rice, pasta, or potatoes, for lentil-based meals. Notice not just how full you feel, but how steady your energy is, how well you recover after activity, and how sharp your focus remains. These small experiments are how transformation begins. And if you found value in today's talk, I'd love for you to be part of this community. Like this video, share it with someone who could benefit, and subscribe for more evidence-based insights that turn science into tools for everyday life. Together, we're building not just stronger muscles, but stronger lives. Because in the end, longevity isn't about avoiding decline, it's about actively cultivating vitality. And every plate of lentils is one small but powerful step in that direction.